Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. We are all doing well. And today we're going to talk about baseball. Baseball starts off on Thursday, opening day, April 1st. A slew of games that day. And then the season gets going basically in full swing Saturday. There are games Friday on Good Friday, but you see a lot of off days on Friday, and then Saturday series get going. For the Blue Jays, they start off at Yankee Stadium, then they'll pivot to Texas, where as of right now, Texas is slated to have a full barn. So the Rangers in Arlington should have a full building when the Jays go through on the 5th to the 7th, which will be interesting. We haven't seen full capacity at an event in over a calendar year, but with baseball, with Texas, and with UFC in April 24th, they're going to be having a full sold-out event in Jacksonville. So we're starting to see crowds come back in. That'll be something to track this year. Just beyond the stats, beyond the numbers, is just what crowds are like. How many people are there? What can they do with the crowd? So I'll be interested to watch that. Teams like Texas, and these are all outdoor stadiums for the most part. Again, you got the Blue Jays likely won't play at home. They play in a dome, and there are some dome teams, but a lot of these stadiums are outdoors, so you can social distance well. And again, you get fresh air. And for me anyway, it's time that we start to, adjust our thinking and move forward, because, staying in the past, and just being afraid of everything is not the answer, in my opinion, moving forward. But I thought I'd start, I did a lot of research for this podcast. The baseball offseason is so interesting because it starts basically in December, but nobody signed in December. And then this year, there's really nobody signed in January, and you get to February. It's a long haul before you get to, now, you got a long time of spring training, over a month, and that's long. And again, I'm not a big fan of exhibition games in any sport. Again, all-star games, exhibition games. I like the real stuff. So when it starts on Thursday and you get, likes of the Dodgers playing in Houston and, Jays, Yankees, I'm all in. So, but I did a lot of research because you forget where players end up. And, it's the offseason is so weird because you get the NFL, you have, NHL, NBA. There's a trade deadline day. There's a free agent frenzy where 95% of the work is done on that one day. So it's easier to track. Baseball, there's signings, one day, and then there's 12 days, there's no activity. So I want to do some thorough research, and, I'm going to talk about some broad themes today, but one broad theme just off the top is there are baseball more than any other sport. There are haves and there are have-nots. And to me, it's more important just singling out the haves in baseball, because there are more have-nots than there are haves going into this year, in my opinion. Looking at the rosters, looking at divisions, there are divisions where 4 of the 5 teams are not very good. And that's hard to process sometimes. But a lot of teams are in transition, and a lot of teams are just comfortable with bottoming out. And you see a lot of ownership groups unwilling to spend money, and the teams that are willing to spend money can pick up every player they want, because there's no bidding for them. You see, I'll talk about the Blue Jays and, moves they made. But when you talk about ownership spending money, and ownership groups that have been doing it for, years and years, you got to go with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I'm going to start with the NL West. This offseason, the Dodgers, they were active. A year ago, they acquired Mookie Betts, the former MVP right fielder from the Boston Red Sox. The Red Sox didn't acquire much. Alex Verdugo, a couple pitching prospects in the deal, but they get Mookie Betts. The Dodgers won the World Series. They're the reigning defending World Series champions. And they're coming into this season locked and loaded. You got right field, you got Mookie Betts, again, a former MVP. You get Cody Bellinger in center field, former MVP. You have Corey Seager at shortstop. You get Justin Turner returning after he signed as a free agent to return. You get Max Muncy at first base, who's really emerged as a power bat for this team. But their offseason, interesting. They get probably the biggest fish when it comes to a pitching prospect available, and that's Trevor Bauer. And Trevor Bauer won the Cy Young last year in Cincinnati. He pitched. They made the playoffs. They only played 2 games, but he went 7 2/3, giving up no runs. He was dominant for Cincinnati last year, and he turned that into a big payday, worth over $100 million with opt-outs, and a good contract for him, making close to $40 million a season. But the signing of Bauer is massive because it keeps him away from other teams that could potentially push the Dodgers. Looking at their staff right now, they have Trevor Bauer, Cy Young winner. Clayton Kershaw, multiple time Cy Young winner. Walker Buehler, not a Cy Young winner. He's my pick to win it this year for the National League. And you could argue he's the best pitcher on the staff right now. Then you got David Price, who didn't pitch last year, and they won a World Series, but he's won a Cy Young. He's still pitching very well. He was a huge part of the Red Sox winning in 2018. I'll get to him in a second. Julio Rodriguez, the guy is pitched well in the playoffs. He's an up-and-coming prospect. I think he's going to be in the rotation. I think the kid's got a lot of potential, really strong fastball, can get up to 95, 96 on the gun, and he's got a knockdown curveball that gets people swinging, out of their shoes. And then you have, the big ginger carrot top, Dustin May. He's had mixed reviews so far in his career, but he looks like a guy they want to start. So Bauer, Kershaw, Buehler, Urias, May, and then you have David Price. You have 6 guys there that could start for this team that are all really good. And I would go probably with Price and Urias, and then you could put May out of the bullpen as a long man, but I would do that temporarily. This team's going to make the playoffs easily, and I think they're the favorite to win it all again. But looking at this team, you get David Price and you use him as a starter in the beginning of the year, but he's in the bullpen come the playoffs. I look at the back end of their bullpen. It's really their one weakness. Joe Kelly's a good reliever. Kenley Jansen's has mixed reviews in his career. I don't trust him in the big moments. I'd put David Price as my closer. Bring him in there. He'll strike guys out. He's still got tons of arm left in him. And he did it in 2018. The knock on him forever when the Blue Jays acquired him was he couldn't win the big game. We closed out games for the Red Sox. And I view him as a guy that could do that, pitch multiple innings. The Dodgers are up 3-2 against the Braves in the NLCS. He comes in, he pitches the 8th and the 9th, and he just closes the door. I like him in that role, but they have so much versatility, so much flexibility, where if David Price isn't going and they want to give him a stint in the bullpen, you can throw Dustin May. He can make a spot start. He can give you 5-6 innings. But looking at Bauer, Kershaw, and the biggest benefit for Bauer coming is Clayton Kershaw. Clayton Kershaw finally won a World Series last year. That monkey's off his back. Forever, he was known as a choke artist because he had a losing record in the playoffs. He had an ERA over 350. And, I think a huge problem with Kershaw is managers left him in too long in games, and guys would figure him out third time through the order, and they start hitting home runs. And you had guys like Madison Bumgarner, who is a better playoff pitcher than Kershaw, who just did it better than him. Again, it's not all on him, but again, when you're an ace pitcher, you're going to feel the heat. So I just look at Kershaw. He's now the third guy in that rotation because he's getting older. He's not throwing as hard as he wants. He's throwing like 92, 93 on the gun. He's still got wicked stuff. Don't get me wrong. But Bauer had an ERA under 150 last year for the season. It was a shortened season, but the guy was just chucking heat. Then you got Walker Buehler. Like I said, he's my favorite to win the Cy Young. He's, a skinny guy, tall, but he's deceivingly quick with his fastball, and his breaking ball and that change curve is so hard to hit, and he gets guys looking a lot. So I would say Buehler 1, Bauer 2, Kershaw is your third guy. He's got some shields in front of him where he's going to get favorable matchups. He's not going to be put in pressure situations come playoff time if everything goes well. If they're healthy, their arms are good come playoff time. Again, he may start game 3. For me, that would be what I would do, because Bauer and Buehler are better than Kershaw right now. And that's no knock on him. He's still a very good pitcher. This may be the most loaded staff in the history of baseball. I mean, 3 right now you have 3 Cy Young winners on the staff. And I was saying Price is going to go to the bullpen in all likelihood. And Buehler, I think, will win a Cy Young before his career is over. So that's 4. You never get that much depth. 4 Cy Young winners on one team. Then you have Mookie Betts, who's 2 MVPs in the outfield. Seager, who's a very good, he's won a Gold Glove at short. Mookie Betts is a multiple time Gold Glove winner in right field. I mean, this team lost Jock Peterson, but they really haven't lost that. They've gotten stronger. They got AJ Pollock, who can fill in and left, who's a very serviceable player. So, long story short, this team is loaded and by far the best team in baseball heading into the season. Things can change. Injuries come up in baseball. We see, pitchers go through things. So, subject to change. But I'm going to go through their division here, and it makes me feel better even if they do have problems. There's not that team in this division. You're like, okay, this team scares me. Well, there is one, but other than that, we'll get to that. I'll go next to Colorado. Colorado Rockies, they're in a transition. They were a team that were right around the playoffs. I mean, they moved Tulowitzki a few years ago to the Blue Jays. They've gone through that. They've had some good power bats. They had, one of the best, if not, I think the best third baseman in baseball in Nolan Ironado. He's won, I think, 6 Gold Gloves. The guy's a flat out stud, loves hitting in Coors Field, hitting over 40 home runs multiple times. And a guy that is just consistent, really good defensively, and just one of the better baseball players in the game. They decided to move him this offseason. I think a lot of that had to do with money. His contract coming up sooner rather than later. He's kind of expressed frustration about the team not doing more to help him win after they missed the playoffs the past couple of years. And, they decided to move him. I think both parties were excited. He gets moved to the Cardinals. I'll talk about what they can do when I get to the NL Central. But that's a huge loss at third base that they didn't really fill. But they still have Trevor Story. He's a shortstop that had a lot of publicity when he came in because he was first, I think, 12 games in the bigs. He hit 10 home runs. The guy was on a tear. He's still a very good player. He's kind of a power bat, not great defensively, but he's the brand name guy that you're going to sell now that Arenado's gone in Colorado. They acquired CJ Crone. He's kind of a veteran first baseman, but this team is not great. They got John Gray. He's been there for over a decade. He's a consistent guy. He's going to have a 3.40, 3.50 ERA, and he's going to give you. Playing in Colorado is tough on pitchers. For him to have that ERA over that period of time is actually really impressive because Coors Field's the smallest field in baseball. So it's tough. It's the biggest field in baseball. It's tough to hit home runs, so that does help pitchers. But it's just good numbers. I look at Antonio Senzella. He's been there for a while. So they're keeping some of their veteran staff. They got Kyle Freeland. He's out a month. They got Herman Marquez. I mean, they have guys they've had there for years. I think their pitching staff's not terrible. They don't have an ace on the staff. But they'll be competitive, for this division. But Colorado's in a state of flux. I don't think they're one of those teams that I'm like, okay, they're terrible. I think they could maybe get to 500 with this division the way it's set up. But Colorado's got nothing that you're really excited about long term. Arizona. Arizona. So for a bunch of years, Arizona looked like they really wanted to compete, and they had some good players. They had, Ketel Marte, and they had some prospects that they really liked, and they had Paul Goldschmidt, and they moved on from him, and now they're kind of in this position where they have some young players, but they've signed a lot of veterans, and you don't see a lot of elite talent. So looking at their pitching staff, they have Madison Bumgarner. I love Madison Bumgarner probably more than any pitcher I've ever seen pitch. I think he's one of the best postseason pitchers in the history of baseball. What he did in 2015 where he went, game 5, went, 9 innings for the Giants. Then he comes back 2 days rest and he pitches the last 3 innings of Game 7 to win the World Series. It's one of the best performances I've ever seen. He deserved to win World Series MVP. Just a stud. But he's not what he used to be. He's past couple of years, his ERA has been over 4 the last 2 years. He's not an ace of a staff anymore, and that's what he's going to be on Arizona. And it's just not. He's gone through some injuries. He's had some tough times. In San Francisco, they decided to move on from him. He gets a good chunk of change from Arizona, and I think that's a team hoping that he's going to bring something that he just simply doesn't have anymore. They have Luke Weaver. He's a veteran. He's been there for a long time. Caleb Smith. But it's a slew of unproven starters that they're relying on here. And the rest of the lineup, Nick Ahmed, good player, really good in the infield. Asdrubal Cabrera is a guy who's bounced around, played on the Nationals when they won the World Series. He's played for the Mets. He's a guy that can play all around the infield. Not a guy I'd want to play every day. I think he's more of a utility guy. He can pinch hit, but they signed him. Eduardo Escobar is another guy, good third baseman. Played the majority of his career in Minnesota, but he's more of a utility guy that you can play, every third game or something, but not an everyday guy. They still have Ketel Marte. They still have David Peralta and right, but I go through those names. None of them are household names. They don't have any elite bats that you're like, whoa, I'm afraid of that. And comparing them to the Dodgers, it's like mincemeat. So again, they're a team very close to Colorado for me. I like Colorado's staff a little bit more. I'd say I like that Arizona bats a little bit more than Colorado's. So these two teams should be close. Then San Francisco. San Francisco, again, moved on from Bumgarner a few years ago, but they still have a lot of the remains of their World Series teams. Just looking at it, they got Buster Posey at catcher. I love Buster. He's gone through some injury problems. He's not swinging the bat as good as he used to be. They still love him in San Francisco, but he's getting long in the tooth. Brandon Crawford was a fantastic shortstop when they won the World Series. But again, that was in 2015. This is 2021. It's been a while. They still have Brandon Belt at first. They're just older players. They acquired a few years ago. They got Evan Longoria. Tampa Bay moved on from him because Tampa Bay knows when to get rid of players when they're a year too early rather than a year too late. And Longoria has been injured this whole time in San Francisco. When he does play, we haven't really seen his bat consistently. And he's playing third base, and it's not at a high level anymore. So it's an old team. Again, looking up their prospects, Mike Yastrzemski is one of their top players. He's fun player to watch. And I was thinking, okay, this kid's pretty good. I remember watching San Francisco last year. He's 30 years old. I mean, he's not a kid. His father was an MLB player, pretty good one. But again, it's an older team. Their staff, Johnny Cueto. Johnny Cueto was a great pitcher, but he's gone through Tommy John. He's had some other injuries. He's never healthy. Kevin Gausman. When you go through the ringer like he did in Baltimore, I don't know how much confidence he has left. Plus, he's kind of over the hill. They got Aaron Sanchez, the former Blue Jays pitcher. I'm sure everybody remembers him. He was going to be the prodigy for the Blue Jays, but he's had finger issues with blisters and everything. He's trying to revitalize his career. Then they have Alex Wood too, formerly the Dodgers. I view this team lesser than I do Arizona and Colorado, and it's too much of a veteran team where they're trying to get younger, but they haven't done it that successfully because they still have a lot of guys. They moved off some bad contracts, but I don't expect this team to be very competitive. And again, this division is not great. But there is a team that could push the Dodgers. And, this division may have the two best teams in baseball. And I'm not even kidding about that. I think that's how much I think of the San Diego Padres. San Diego last year, they make it to the playoffs. They do lose to the Dodgers, but we see a lot of fight from the likes of Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr., and they got some playoff experience. So what do they do in the offseason? Well, they see Kevin Cash not let pull Blake Snell in the midst of a great start for the Rays in Game 6. And they say, well, Blake Snell probably doesn't want to go back to Tampa. Let's go get him from the Rays. So they acquire Blake Snell, Cy Young winner. Pretty good deal. Then they go out and get Yu Darvish, another guy who had a tough time pitching for the Dodgers, but he went to the Cubs past couple of years. He's found his game. He's pitching at a high level again. So another pretty good trade. They have Joe Musgrove. They have Chris Paddock, who's been there. He's a consistent guy. So they have a pretty good staff. They're hoping Mike Clevenger, formerly of the Indians, really good pitcher, can come back before the end of the year. Unlikely, because I believe he's going to have Tommy John. But San Diego, they could add another arm. I think they could improve their depth, but solid. Their bullpen, they got Mark Melancon as their closer. He's been a great closer in the league for a while. Keona Kella, formerly of the Texas Rangers, he's got a lot of playoff experience. Emilio Pagan has pitched for the San Francisco Giants, won a World Series. So they got some good stuff going there. But then you get to the bats. Manny Machado, won a Gold Glove winner. He's hit over 30 plus home runs multiple times. The guy loves, he sees fastballs. He loves cranking them out of the park. And he's had a lot of success during his career, whether it was in Baltimore or in San Diego. Then there's Fernando Tatis Jr., who got over $300+ million extension after playing less than a full season. He's only played 140 games in his MLB career thus far. But I maybe wouldn't have signed him right away, but the kid's electric. He's the most fun player to watch in baseball, and it's rare that you say that because there's not that many guys that show a lot of personality. This guy is full of personality. He's full of piss and vinegar. He's not afraid to do a strut when he hits a home run. He'll, round the bases rather slower. He's going to get beamed by pitchers every now and then because of his actions, but he's so compelling, and it's good to see a player, get that notoriety and keep baseball interesting. They still have Eric Hosmer at first. I still think Eric Hosmer is a really good first baseman, especially defensively, but his bat is still there. Trent Grisham, underrated right fielder. They got Will Myers. Tommy Pham is another good utility guy. This team is set up. Are they better than the Dodgers? No. I don't like their pitching as much. Again, I think Tatis and Machado could give Bellinger and Betts a run for their money, but I think the Dodgers just have more on the table right now than San Diego. But they have a good team. Again, Snell has won a Cy Young. Yu Darvish is consistent. If Tatis Jr. can continue to grow and continue to show the signs of an elite MVP-like player, the Padres should give, the Dodgers maybe a little scare, a little run for their money. Again, in this division, the Dodgers are the clear favorite, but I think San Diego's got a lot to say, and I think they'll be an intriguing team to follow all season long. That brings us to the NL Central, and I mentioned, the big splash for St. Louis in the offseason was acquiring Nolan Ironado. He's obviously, like I said before, one of the best third basemen in baseball. They decided to keep Yadier Molina, their veteran catcher, future Hall of Famer, multiple-time Gold Glover, behind the plate. They still have Paul Goldschmidt. They still have Matt Carpenter. So they do have a lot of the weapons that they've had. They still have Tyler O'Neill, the Canadian. So they're a team that missed the playoffs last year. They did go through a lot with COVID, and they had to shut down. But adding Arenado at third base is just such an addition to this team. And the big thing to watch and the most compelling thing there will be, how does he hit, outside of Coors Field? He's been a guy over his career. He's hit over 330 at home, and he's hit, I think 260 on the road. So 260 isn't bad, but can he improve that a little bit? Can he be more of a consistent hitter on the road outside of Coors Field? And, he'll be playing at Busch Stadium. How's he going to fare at his new home stadium as we get going here? Their staff is pretty solid. They didn't really add. They brought everybody back. They got Jack Flaherty. He's kind of the guy that they look at as a real future. They still have Adam Wainwright, the veteran who's only played his career in St. Louis. They decided to bring him back on a 1-year deal. Miles Mikolas, Dakota Hudson. They also have Giovanni Gallegos, who's kind of reliever, kind of a star. He's an X factor because the guy can throw close to 100 miles an hour. And I think they're working him out a little bit more in spring training to see what he can do. But he's a guy who could play a multitude of positions for St. Louis. And their bullpen really is one of their big strengths. They got Jordan Hicks, who can throw over 100 miles an hour. He's coming off Tommy John. So interesting to see what he has left. Carlos Martinez, a former starting pitcher in baseball. He's converted to the bullpen. Pretty solid arm. Andrew Miller, you remember him from the Indians and the Yankees. He's a high leverage guy, pitches 7th, 8th inning. He can pitch multiple innings, getting up there in age at 35, but he's still got something in the tank. So St. Louis looks like a strong team in a division where it's kind of in flux and teams are kind of undecided where they want to be. Pittsburgh, the Pirates. Yeah, they got to be, this year they're going to be one of the worst teams in baseball. And if they're not, I'll be shocked because looking through this roster, it's pretty bare. You got Trevor Cahill. He's pitched all over the Cubs, Reds, Oakland. He's pitched everywhere. But they have a bunch, Tyler Anderson's another guy who's pitched all over the league. They got journeyman. They got Chris Stratton, Kyle Crick. They got a young bullpen, but it's just, they got guys who really haven't proven themselves they're going to play every day. Kevin Newman, Colin Moore, and Adam Frazier. Polanco has been in Pittsburgh a long time, but they're not. There's clearly in a transitional phase. They got rid of Starling Marte. They've gotten rid of some. Andrew McCutcheon's gone the past couple of years. They're moving on from that older core that got them to the playoffs, but never got them World Series, and they're tanking in a sense for better assets. And I don't expect Pittsburgh to be a very good team. The big thing they might be in this division is a spoiler. It seems it doesn't matter if a team should be better on paper in this division every year. It's always close. And those matchups, those serious weekend series with Pittsburgh could be the nail in the coffin to one of these teams and making and potentially missing the playoffs. The Milwaukee Brewers. This team, I really don't get them when it comes to their management. They have one of the best players in baseball in Christian Yelich. They acquired him from the Miami Marlins for basically nothing. I mean, for a guy who won an MVP, they got Lorenzo Cain too in center. He's kind of still playing at a pretty decent level, really good defensively. But I don't get this team not adding elite pitching and adding more superstars to this roster. Looking at their offseason, they were active, but really not in the right way. They acquired Jackie Bradley Jr. Okay, I love Jackie Bradley Jr. as a defensive outfield, but the guy can't hit. He's basically, I look at him as a defensive specialist that has no bat. For a long time, Billy Hamilton was a guy playing in Cincinnati. He's a center fielder, but he would never play and just be used as a pinch runner late in games. Jackie Bradley Jr. can play defensively, but he's going to hit 230 for you the whole year if you're lucky. And again, not a great ad. Derek Fisher. Derek Fisher started his career in Houston, was promised to be this great prospect, great left fielder that was going to develop. Got traded to the Blue Jays. They got rid of him. So they clearly didn't believe in him. He's now in Milwaukee, third team, trying to find a career for himself. Avacya Garcia played all of his career in Chicago for the Chicago White Sox. Was good hitter, but not consistent enough. Again, batted about 250. Not great defensively in right field. That's part of the reason he's no longer there. And again, not great. Billy McKinney, formerly of the Yankees, Blue Jays. He's just a utility guy. Colton Wong, another guy who's really good defensively, doesn't have a great bat. Again, the list can go on and on. But I just look at this. You got Yelich, you got Lorenzo Cain. Their bullpen, they got Josh Hader, who may be the best reliever in baseball. And I'm talking about all of baseball. I love Hader. Their staff, it's just an unproven staff. I mean, Brent Suter, he's been there. Brett Anderson, but Starting for the second straight year, opening day is Brandon Woodruff. I like Brandon Woodruff, but he's not an ace. And I just look at this management group and say, what are you doing? You have an MVP on your roster. Add to it and try to win a World Series. You had a window. And I think it's closing in on them. And I think they'll be competitive because they got players. Yelich will want to keep them competitive. But if his bat goes quiet, I wouldn't be surprised to see this team start piling up on the losses. And then you're really sitting there thinking, what the hell did we do? That puts us to the Cincinnati Reds. Cincinnati, the big thing for Cincinnati for me is how they're going to start their season. If they start off slow, they lost Trevor Bauer, who was their best pitcher. If they start their season off slow, I think we'll see a slew of trades, or at least teams looking to add. They got two guys on the roster, Luis Castillo and Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray went to the Yankees, didn't have a lot of success. He was traded in season, stayed there a few years. But since arriving in Cincinnati, he's really found his career. He's got a good niche for himself, and he looks like a guy that can be very productive at the major league level. Then they got Wade Miley as well, but Castillo, Sonny Gray, if the team starts off slow but they're pitching well, teams are going to want these players. I look at the Yankees. Would they reacquire Sonny Gray? I think they have to consider it. Look, we'll talk about them later, but they don't have a great core, and their pitching staff could very much be improved, and Sonny Gray would help them a lot. I think a lot of teams, the Milwaukee Brewers, would they trade him in division? I mean, that's always a tough proposition, but they're a team that would be looking to add to their team. The Toronto Blue Jays. I'll get to their pitching staff. It's nothing to write home about. Sonny Gray would instantly become their second best pitcher in my mind. So if they start off slow, what do? Do they trade these guys? They don't have a bad bullpen. I mean, they got Amir Garrett is a good reliever. Noe Ramirez has pitched for the Angels for multiple years. Sean Doolittle won a World Series in Washington, but they don't have they got decent bats again. Castellanos, formerly Detroit Tigers, now a right fielder, converted from third base. They acquired Mike Moustakas, Nick Senzel in center's fun player to watch. But this team seems like a team that could be ripe for selling. Eugenio Suarez has been rumored to be traded for years. He's still in Cincinnati. So between him, Castillo, Sonny Gray, do any of them get moved, and for what return? So that's really what's piques my interest when it comes to the Cincinnati Reds and what they do into the season. So we'll see what happens with the Reds. That brings us to the Chicago Cubs and to close out the Central. They're an interesting team for a whole lot of reasons. They seem to they don't seem to know what they're doing. They have, they've lost John Lester this offseason. They lost Yu Darvish, so they've shed some salary. They let Kyle Schwarber walk to the Nationals. So they're in flux. What do? They reacquired Jake Arrieta, who pitched his best baseball of his career in Chicago when they won the World Series. But again, he's a little long in the tooth. I don't know how I feel about that addition. They got Zach Davies, formerly of Milwaukee. They still have Kyle Hendricks. So their staff's okay. But looking at this team, they still have Chris Bryant. They still have Anthony Rizzo. Javi Baez is one of the best shortstops / second baseman in the game. They got rid of Dexter Fowler. That was a good move. But they still have Jason Hayward, who's eating through their salary cap. I've heard for years they're trading Chris Bryant. He's still on the roster. So are you converting into a tank, which you won your World Series? It was 108 years. I think Cubs fans would accept. But I don't know what they're doing here. I look at their pen. Again, Craig Kimbrell, he's still there. He hasn't been great since leaving the Red Sox. His arms exploded. His ERA has been terrible. They got Brandon Workman, who's coming off Tommy John, Ryan Tepera, who used to pitch for the Blue Jays. This division, looking at it, I like the Cardinals the most. I think Milwaukee can be competitive. I see the Cubs similar to Milwaukee, and you got Pittsburgh, who I expect to be terrible. And who knows what happens with the Cincinnati Reds. I think that can go one of two ways, like I said. But the Cubs are in the state of, do we want to be competitive? Do we want to rebuild? And that's a terrible position to be in. Commit to one. Being mediocre is one of the worst things that you can do in sports. Forever, the Toronto Maple Leafs finished 9th in the Eastern Conference, and they miss out by the playoffs by 4 points. What did that do for you? Made your fans pissed off because you missed it by that much. And it also said, well, if we had this one player, well, no, you stink. And I look at the Cubs saying, St. Louis is better than you. They just acquired the best third baseman in baseball. They got Jack Flaherty. They got some good players. They got rid of Dexter Fowler. They got younger. They got better. And the Cubs, I love Javi Baez. I think he's, again, I mentioned Tatis Jr. off the top. Javi Baez is one of the most fascinating, entertaining players to watch in all of baseball, no doubt. But what do you do with the rest of that roster? And I just think they need to commit to one or the other. And they may say, okay, this division's not that strong this year, which I agree with. They could have it. But they shed Lester. They shed Darvish's salary. You're showing to your core, we don't really want to win, but we're going to keep you guys. So it's like the Raptors not trading Kyle Lowry. So you want to make the playoffs, but you're going to trade away Norman Powell and Terrence Davis and Matt Thomas? Well, that's counterintuitive. You want to make the playoffs, you want to go on a run, but you're actually hurting our team long-term into doing that. So I just think the Cubs are playing their hand wrong here, and it just doesn't look good. So we'll see what they do, but tough luck for the Chicago Cubs, that's for sure. That brings us to the National League East, and what I think I'm going to do, I'm just thinking on the fly here for this podcast, is I'm going to do two podcasts, one NL preview, then I'll do an AL preview. So that's what I'm going to do, just because I think break it off. They'll both be about an hour, and that'll be easier for everybody to listen to. But I'm just thinking on the fly for everybody listening here. That brings us to the Nationals. The Nationals, World Series 2 years ago, they've made some changes to their team. I still think this division's really tough. The NL East, I think, is the toughest division in all of baseball. It used to be the AL East. It isn't anymore because the Red Sox and Orioles just aren't great teams. But I look at the National. I'm going to go through the Nationals, Phillies, Mets, even the Marlins now are competitive. This is a dogfight division. But the Nationals, they still have a strong staff. They went out and signed John Lester. But I'm going to go through the ages of the staff. 37. Steven Strasburg, former Cy Young winner, 32. Max Scherzer, former Cy Young winner, 36. Well, I'm just thinking this team does have 3 Cy Young winners, so that's interesting. Patrick Corbin, 31. Another real solid guy to have late in your rotation. Then they also have Joe Ross, who's late 20s, early 30s. So a strong staff. The one big bugaboo with the staff is, again, age comes. Your arm's been used a lot. Scherzer has pitched a ton of innings over his career. Strasburg's had injury problems since he was drafted. John Lester's, again, 37 years old. He doesn't throw, a hard fastball, but he's had a lot of wear and tear. Can he hold up long term? That's always a concern. So there's an issue there. But Scherzer, I don't worry about him being 36. I still think he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. But I worry about Strasburg always, because when he's pitching, he's one of the best pitchers in all of baseball, no doubt. But is he pitching? That's the big question. Is he available? And more often than not, he's not. And it can be problematic because then you have guys filling in who aren't good enough. And with this division, every game counts. Their bullpen has always been a problem. When they won the World Series, it was really crazy that they won it because their bullpen was pretty terrible. It was really because Scherzer and Strasburg went 7 innings every game, and they would literally pitch Daniel Hudson, Sean Doolittle. That's about it. Looking at their bullpen, they got Brad Hand. That was a good offseason addition. He can close with this team. I expect him to. He had a pretty solid season last year in Cleveland, and that was a good signing. They still have Tanner Rainey, Wander Suero, again, not a real proven guy. They keep Daniel Hudson. He got the final out in the World Series for the Nationals, so he's pitched, in the Angels organization for the Blue Jays. This guy's got some pedigree. He's a good reliever. Looking at their team, they got Juan Soto. I mentioned players that pop. Juan Soto is one of the best hitters in baseball. He's a young player, but he's already proving himself to be such a threat, such a great player. And he's, already on the scene, already doing a lot for the game, and just a stud through and through. They got some veterans on their team. They lost Bryce Harper a few years ago. We saw Howie Kendrick retire, so they're kind of transitioning there. Ryan Zimmerman should be back after opting out last year due to COVID. They got Trey Turner at short, so he'll still be there. Adam Eaton walked, so they're in flux. They got Starlin Castro. They got Josh Bell to play first base from Pittsburgh. They acquired Alex Avila to be a backup catcher to Yan Gomes. So Josh Harrison's added to the team. So I like their staff more than I do their bats, but they got a strong staff if it can stay healthy. But the biggest thing that they have is depth. Say Strasburg has something happen. Corbin is a very good pitcher. He can be a reliable guy every 5 days. You're going to get a solid effort from Patrick Corbin. We saw that in the playoffs and in the World Series, him coming out of the bullpen and throwing innings for them. So still a strong team. They've lost some of their World Series talent, but they still have the makings of a winning team. I like the Brad Hand signing, and I think it's interesting to see if they add. And, they've gotten better since, getting rid of Bryce Harper. So that's always funny, too, to see what he does. Since I mentioned Bryce Harper, I'll go over to the Philadelphia Phillies. Bryce Harper, right fielder, signed a $300 million deal, over 13 years with the Phillies, played 2 years so far, has not made the playoffs. Got to be frustrating for him. He hasn't been fantastic since arriving in Philadelphia. He hasn't been an MVP, which he was in Washington. But I got to believe that he's hoping for a big year. Philly, again, they re-signed JT Realmuto, one of the best catchers in baseball, is back in Philadelphia, so that's a good signing. They still have Andrew McCutchen, who, Gene Segura, Didi Gregorius. I still like him at shortstop, but since he left the Yankees, he filled in valiantly for Derek Jeter. I mean, that's not an easy position to say, okay, yeah, the captain's gone. Who's going to play short for us now? Whoever it is never going to be loved as much as, Derek Jeter, for Christ's sake. But he did a valiant job, and I give him a ton of credit for coming out and playing well. And I think he's played pretty well in Philadelphia. So they got some veterans. They got Rhys Hoskins. They got some decent bats, but other than Bryce Harper, there's not Bryce Harper, Realmuto are the face of this team when it comes to getting hits. And usually you don't see catchers be the face of a franchise when it comes to, hitting. They got a solid staff. They got Aaron Nola, who's looked good in his career. He's had a mixed bag, had some injuries, but he's good. They got Vince Velasquez, kind of a veteran guy, but he still can pitch. Zach Wheeler they acquired from the Mets. That's a good add. That was a good signing. He's been a really consistent pitcher for the Mets, and I like Wheeler. Chase Anderson, he's bounced around baseball. Who knows with him? Zach Eflin's been there for a while. They also have this kid, Jojo Romero. He's 24, still in camp as of now, has not been sent down. He could be a guy from the outside to potentially make this team. But I look at the Nationals. I like the Nationals a little bit more than the Phillies. This division is going to be a dogfight. But I like the Nats a little bit more because you got Juan Soto. I think he's going to need some help for sure. But I look at the likes of Trey Turner and Bryce Harper, Realmuto, Turner, Soto. But I just think the pitching of the Nats is a little stronger than Philadelphia's. And acquiring Brad Hand, acquiring a good guy, having Daniel Hudson, I just think they're a little bit stronger when it comes to the whole team. The outfield of Philly is definitely stronger than the outfield of the Nats, but I think the Nationals will be competitive and be slightly better than Philadelphia just based on the roster. That brings us to the Mets. The Mets had not many teams spent a lot of money in the offseason or made trades or anything for that matter. The Mets were not one of those teams. They got Francisco Lindor from the Cleveland Indians, and he's one of the best shortstops in baseball. They acquired a lot of prospects to get him, but he's the real deal. They can put him at short, put a Mets jersey on him. You can market him. He's, brand name. He's box office. They got a new ownership group for the Mets, and that's a great way to start it off, to say, hey, we got Francisco Lindor. We're going to be a team that's competitive. We're going to win games. Don't you worry. We're set up. So no complaints on that signing of Francisco Lindor, and he's actually on the last year of his deal. He set a deadline for the team that opening day is the last day he'll negotiate a contract. But it's reported that they are on the right track, and he will be getting a contract over $300 million, regardless whether it's from the Mets or if he walks after this year. But that would be terrible if they acquired him for 1 year and he walks. They gave away a lot of good prospects, and I'm sure that the Mets want him for the long term. They wouldn't have traded for him otherwise. So hope for their sake, they better get a deal done before the season starts. But the Mets, they got, they also, in that Francisco Lindor trade, they acquired Carlos Carrasco. He's an inspirational story. He's had cancer. He's battled throughout his career through health issues. But when he's on the mound, the guy's consistent. He can still throw. He's got great off-speed pitches. I look at Carrasco coming over from the Indians. I think he'll be able to transition to the National League game and play very well. Jacob Degrom, multiple time Cy Young winner. You could argue the best pitcher in baseball over the past couple years. The guy has been playing for the Mets with a bad team, so his record doesn't look good, but he'd lose games, giving up 2 runs. I can't remember how many afternoons I'd look and say, DeGrom went 8 innings, 2 earned runs, they lose 2-1, so he takes a loss. He ends the year, 8-9. It didn't reflect how good he was because the team just simply couldn't score runs. It should help. This year, it shouldn't be as tough for the Mets to score runs because, they have great pitching and pretty good hitting as well. They also got Thor, a.k.a. Noah Syndergaard. You might know him with the long hair. He's coming back. He had Tommy John, so he's going to miss the start of the year. But when he's right, he can throw 100 miles an hour, and he's a stud pitcher. If you remember, Blue Jays fans, he was traded from the Jays to the Mets in the R.A. Dickey deal. That might be a nightmare for most Blue Jays fans, but yeah, he was part of that deal and did not go so well for the Toronto Blue Jays. R.A. Dickey did not turn out to be very good for the Jays. Syndergaard's been pretty great for the Mets. Definitely better than R.A. Dickey was for Toronto, that's for sure. And they also have, formerly of the Blue Jays, Marcus Strowman. He opted out after last year for COVID reasons, whatever. But he's coming back. He's playing in the last year of his contract. He's going to be on the mound, moving around a ton, a lot of personality. You love or hate Marcus Strowman. I think you just kind of enjoy him. Like I said, he's a personality. He brings something different. Can he be a little arrogant and can he be a little tone deaf? Yes. But he brings something different to the table. So I gotta appreciate that at the same time, that he's not, your cookie cutter pitcher. But again, this Mets team, they got a lot to like. And that's the big thing about this team, is that in past years, you'd say, well, I really like DeGrom. I really like Syndergaard. But you're saying, who's going to hit for this team? We got Francisco Lindor, who was on the Cleveland Indians World Series, when they got to the World Series losing to the Cubs. He's got playoff experience. He's done it all. And he automatically gives that team more credibility. And that's the big thing for this team. And I look at their bullpen. They acquired Trevor May. He's a guy that's probably not well known to people, been a really consistent reliever in baseball for many years for the Minnesota Twins. Miguel Castro from Baltimore. He's been beat up there. Good reliever. Edwin Diaz, they're hoping that he can turn it around and become a solid closer. They still have Dylan Betances, Seth Lugo, Aaron Loop, formerly of the Blue Jays. So they got some good pitching, and that's one thing they can rely on, but I think they'll also be able to score runs. So I think the Mets are still an unknown because they got to have Thor come back from Tommy John. They need Carrasco to stay healthy. So there are a lot of ifs with this team. Can they stay healthy? Can Taijuan Walker be their fifth starter every fifth day? But it's definitely something, if you're a Mets fan, that you haven't said in a while. There's hope. There's a team here. We just need to find it. And I think they got all the trappings of a team that could make a playoff push and be competitive in this division. So far, I think the Mets, Phillies, and Nationals are all really close because I think you got Soto, you have Harper, and you have Lindor. They're all elite players, and I would say on paper I'd have the Mets and Nats above the Phillies just because I like the pitching more. More often than not, games come down to pitching. Great pitching beats great hitting every time. And I look at the Nationals and the Mets staff, it's slightly better than the Phillies. So I give them a good edge. But again, it's a tight 3-team race so far. Next up is the Miami Marlins. They made the playoffs last year. It was an expanded playoffs, but they made the playoffs. In their credit, the Blue Jays wouldn't have made the playoffs last year if it wasn't for expanded playoffs. Neither were the Marlins. But we've seen them make it. The Marlins actually won their play-in round. They made it to the first round of the playoffs. So they got some good stuff happening in Miami. But they got a young team. They got Sandy Alcantara, who's kind of their veteran of their staff. He's 25. They got Jorge Guzman, 25. Elser Hernandez, 25. Pablo Lopez, 25. Cito Sanchez, 22. Trevor Rogers, 23. Those are all starting pitchers. All 25 or under. And that's what they've been doing. They've been trading away guys that they've had in their system. They traded Christian Yelich, traded JT Realmuto, traded Giancarlo Stanton, and they've committed to getting younger, drafting, developing guys. And to their credit, it was successful last year in one of the toughest divisions. Do I feel so comfortable with any of those pitching names? No, but I like where they're going. They got some good players. They got bats. They got more young players. Moses Sierra, Jesus Sanchez, Jesus Aguilar, Garrett Cooper, Miguel Rojas. So it's a team it's a wild card because the Marlins are just, you're like, well, what can they do offensively? And I like Jesus Aguilar at first. Miguel Rojas playing in the infield has been really good. But last year they snuck up on everybody. This is going to be a full 162. So it's a different game. It was shorter season last year. I think we'll see teams that did really good last year won't have as much success because in 162, you're going to show if you're good, bad, or ugly, right? And you're not going to be able to hide. In 60 games, you can be great for 60. You got to play another 100 after that in a regular season. So I'll be interested to see what the Marlins can do. I think they're really intriguing. They don't get great fans. The Tampa market has not worked out in pro sports. Really, if I look at the Lightning have a good crowd. Sometimes the Bucks are a mixed bag. But for the Tampa Bay Rays, Miami Marlins, they haven't gotten a lot of fan appreciation. And it's hurt the team. Derek Jeter's down there now, trying to right the franchise. And he's done a decent job so far. I mean, he's got buried for moving contracts. Juan Carlos Stanton was the face of that franchise for years, but that deal has worked out pretty good. The Yelich deal I still think is a disaster. Real Muto, you could say what you want about it. Trading in division's always a scary thought, but Miami, I put them fourth so far. I think they could battle with the Phillies, but I just don't know enough about their team. I haven't seen this group play 162 yet, and I want to see their pitching staff and how it holds up being so young. Can they go 162 and play, consistently and battle for a playoff spot, especially in the toughest division in baseball? That brings us to the final team of the NL. Again, like I said in the middle there a couple minutes ago, I'm going to do NL preview, then I'm going to do an AL preview just to break it up, and won't be as long of a podcast for everybody to listen to. But the Atlanta Braves, they played the Dodgers in the National League Championship Series last year, losing in 7 games. They were up 3-1. It's kind of a choke job, and they're coming back locked and loaded, and they're actually better. I know it's crazy to think, but Mike Saroka, the Canadian from Calgary, he tore his Achilles in his 3rd start of the year last year on the mound, just tore his Achilles. The guy was top 3 in Cy Young the year before, and he can throw heat. Really good pitcher, good Canadian boy. He's 23. He's got great stuff, great arm. Look out for Mike Saroka. You got Ian Anderson, who really became a household name last year. With Saroka out, him and Saroka are roommates. He's 22. He's playing fantastic. They acquired Charlie Morton from the Tampa Bay Rays. He's 37, but he was great last year for the Rays in the playoffs and down the stretch in the World Series. So Charlie Morton still got some game left. They got Drew Smiley. They got Max Fried, who's 20, who still got it. Bryce Wilson is another guy who's 23. So basically what I'm saying is they got options. Saroka, Anderson, Morton, and I think Fried are 4 lock starters. And I'd probably pencil in Wilson, but maybe they'll want to go with Drew Smiley, the veteran. But they have options like the Dodgers that if there's injuries, if there's problems, we can go to this guy and we don't feel so uncomfortable about it. He can fill in those innings and we're not going to, get shelled. So good problem to have in Atlanta. Then going to their bullpen. It's a pretty solid pen. They got Will Smith, who's used to pitch for the Dodgers, World Series champion. Josh Tomlin, formerly a starter for the Cleveland Indians, becoming a reliever. He's a guy that they trust, they like. Sean Newcomb, formerly a starter that they're moving into the bullpen. AJ Minter, solid reliever. Luke Jackson. So is it a great bullpen? No, but their starting pitchers are really good, and you got to hope they can go deep in games, and then it won't be such an issue. And I'm just going to go through the whole roster because it's good. They got your catchers, Travis d'Arnaud. Travis d'Arnaud was with the Mets for the longest time. Actually was drafted by the Blue Jays originally. Then he went to the Dodgers, pitched for them, cat for them briefly in a World Series. Kind of bounced around. It looked like his career might be over, but he gets to Atlanta. He's found his hitting game again. Really consistent hitter, and he's become their starting catcher. Behind him, they have William Contreras, who they're hoping can develop into the future. D'Arnaud's 32, Contreras is 23. So really good catching scenario where d'Arnaud can mentor him. He's still a guy that's going to bring his A game to the table and hopefully continue to bring that bat that's been so consistent over the past number of years. And then the rest of the roster, you got Ozzie Albies, who's really good second baseman. He's 24. He's shown a lot of promise. I think he's still got some more to bring when it comes to his bat, but he's a good player. Austin Riley, third baseman, a power third baseman. And he's, for a power guy, he's actually pretty good defensively. He's only 23. So still coming. You got, one of the best players in all of baseball, Ronald Cueto Jr. The guy's a human highlight reel. Tatis Jr., Acuna Jr., these guys got it. He's 23 years old, already a human highlight reel when it comes to making plays in the field, hitting home runs, just his attitude. I like him. You got Freddie Freeman. He won the National League MVP last year. He's a first baseman, another Canadian on this roster, but he's one of the best first basemen in baseball when it comes to defensively. But he's also a guy that's going to hit 300. He could hit 40 home runs. And again, he won the MVP last year as a first baseman. So this guy can bring it. Johan Camargo, a guy that could be a utility guy, could also start every game for the Braves. Really good. Dansby Swanson is still there. He's been playing short for them for a long period of time. They re-signed Marcell Ozuna, and they got Ender Inciarte. I can go. This team is just locked and loaded to win this division. I think I like the rest of the division. I think one of the Nationals or Mets will make the playoffs as a wild card. But it's I look at the Braves and with the Padres, with the Dodgers, they're right there. They probably should have beat the Dodgers last year. So they're going to come in hungry. They want that challenge. And playing in the toughest division in baseball, they're going to get a lot of competition. They're going to get the Nationals. They're going to get the Mets. They're getting these teams. They're going to have to battle them early and often in the season. And I just like the team should have won last year, probably should have won the World Series being up 3-1 to the Dodgers. But I expect them to come in. Alex Anthopoulos is always ready to make a move if he has to. But he's built a really strong team. They got good management. They got good pitching. They got good bats. They're locked and loaded to win a World Series. I see them as the closest to the Dodgers, and they're both in the National League. So only one team can come out and represent the National League in the World Series. I would still slightly favor the Dodgers because I like their pitching just slightly more, but don't sleep in the Atlanta Braves, and don't be shocked to see a rematch of the National League Championship Series again, because the Braves just have so much firepower. The Dodgers have so much firepower. Teams have gotten better slightly, like I said, but not enough teams have done enough in free agency, spent money drafting to really compete with these two teams. These two teams could be playing in the National League Championship Series for years, plural, to come, because they're built for the long term, and these other teams are going to have to catch up, but it's going to take years for them to catch up because, Ian Anderson, Saroka, 22, 23. You have Trevor Bauer, who's still late 20s. Walker Buehler's in his mid-20s for the Dodgers. It's not going away anytime soon, and these other teams are afraid to spend money often. Team like the Dodgers isn't, and Atlanta may not spend the money that the Dodgers do, but when it comes to drafting and developing, it's hard to say that any team's better at it than they are. So, yeah, Atlanta, I expect them to win the NL East, a really good division. I expect the Mets or the Nats to get a wild card. Maybe both could if they play well enough. But that's the National League. Again, I was going to do both in one podcast, but I think it'd be good to break it up, National League and American League. I'll start off the next podcast talking about the American League East. So I'll talk about the Blue Jays, what they've done, their prospects, what you can expect from them this year. But this was fun getting back into baseball again. A lot of research for me, just knowing where players are and things like that. But it starts Thursday, so that should be a ton of fun. Just watching baseball get going again. It's great off the start, and I kind of lose interest when the playoffs are on, and then I get back into it in July when it's in the home stretch, because 162, it's a lot, but it's great, and I'm sure we'll see another great baseball season starting Thursday. But everybody, thanks so much for the support. Thank you guys for listening. Again, the American League East podcast will be coming out very soon, so keep your eyes and ears locked and loaded for that. But have a great day, and we'll talk soon.